Bureau. You know who Deuce McAllister is. Pride of Morton, Mississippi. Started Ole Miss, starred in the NFL, all-time leading rusher in Saints history, and the color analyst on the New Orleans Saints radio network. He joins us right now. Deuce, do you remember what you were doing 20 years ago today?
Yes, I was very upset.
Uh-oh, I think we lost Deuce. I hope he wasn't upset with us. He says, I was very upset, and then click.
He's had enough of your crap, Richard.
We will get him to expound a little bit on what happened on draft day 2001. All right, so let's try that again. Deuce, we heard you say you were very upset at this point 20 years ago today. Tell me more.
I was very upset. Let's see, Richard, it is about 3:30, so that means we are at least 3.5 hours into the draft, and I had not been taken yet. You know, the draft kicked off at, 12 o'clock on a Saturday, and for someone that was expecting to go top 5, top 10 at worst, you know, it was just, you're heartbroken. You were heartbroken, and you're talking about for someone that's tremendously blessed to be able to still be a first rounder, but a lot lower than I had expected, and even, you know, my agents had expected as well.
So in terms of top 5, if you had fallen there, Atlanta, Arizona, Cleveland, Cincinnati, San Diego, those were the first 5 picks. Who had you had the most communication with leading up to it, where you thought you might land if it turned out to be top 5?
Cleveland was the team that I had visited with. I had spent a lot of time with that organization. They ended up taking Gerard Warren, who was not a bad pick, played down at the University of Florida, defensive tackle. But Cleveland was a team that I thought, hey, look, if it's a top 5 situation, that's who it would be. Another team, New England. I had spent a lot of time with New England as well. I mean, New England was the only team that I did a personal workout for. I mean, Charlie Weiss came up to Oxford. He and my running back coach, Rich Bisaccia, were really, really good friends, and he came up to Oxford. He worked me out. We got on the board. We went through some plays, some things offensively. They had Kevin Falk at that time as well. I mean, but you know, we were 2 different players, so they also took Richard Seymour, who, you know, is a Hall of Fame player. So I mean, how can you say that was the wrong decision for them? So you know, those are just 2 teams right off the bat. You also had San Francisco. They took Carter, defensive end. I think he played over at Stanford. So you know, San Francisco ended up taking a running back later on in the 2nd round, and then the Chicago Bears took David Terrell, Michigan receiver, and they ended up taking a running back as well later on in the draft. So those were the 4 teams within the top 10 that I knew that I'd had a lot of communication with, and those were specific visits that I had taken. Outside of that, I didn't visit any other teams.
Wow. So you were the 2nd running back taken. LaDainian Tomlinson went 5th to San Diego. We know about his career. It certainly was a special one. Did you expect to be picked after LT, or did you think maybe you were going to be the first running back off the board?
No, we knew going into it, and that really was something that played into us picking our agents. LT ended up picking Tom Condon, and I interviewed Tom Condon as well, and we were both vying for the number 1 spot. You know, it was, you know, a lot of draft pundits. It was either myself number 1 or LT number 1, just depending on what you were looking for. And so I felt good as far as being that top guy. One of the things is being hindsight 2020, going back and looking on it. If I had it to do over again, I probably would have played in the Senior Bowl. Just knowing what I know now, the interaction that you get with those coaches, they get to know you a little bit better. You know, you get to spend a little bit more time around those guys. I missed out on all that. And not to say that that was the determining factor, but I think that they got to know LT a little bit better than myself in that situation as far as teams were concerned.
And final thought on that from 20 years ago, when it's all said and done and you hang the cleats up at the end of your career, you look back and you go, maybe that all happened for a reason? I mean, it turned out pretty good, Deuce.
Turned out pretty good. You know, the one thing I go back and look at it, what if I don't have the knee injuries? That's the only thing.
Yeah.
I think obviously the career was, it was a pretty good career overall, but, the only question is, what if you don't have the knee injuries? What if you don't have that first one? I'll take one knee injury, the one back in, I guess it was '07. But what if you don't have the one during Katrina year? How different would the story have been? But, my landing spot ended up being pretty good as well.
Deuce, well, how surprised were you to be taken by New Orleans then? If you say you hadn't met with them, and they had Ricky Williams on board already. Yeah, being a Saints fan, I remember when this pick was made. I was thinking, we already have Ricky Williams. Why another running back? Was it a surprise to go to New Orleans?
It was definitely a surprise. When I say I hadn't met with them, the conversation was a 5-minute conversation at the Senior Bowl when I was passing by their not the Senior Bowl, at the Combine, when I was passing by their area where the players go in and meet with different teams. And I had a meeting with another team, and it was like, hey, that's Coach Jim Haslett. That's the general manager, Randy Mueller. Hey, how you guys doing? I'm from Mississippi. I know you're right down the road. I don't think that I'm going to be picked by you guys. So we didn't spend any time together. I mean, literally, it was probably a 3-minute conversation with the New Orleans Saints. Outside of that, there was nothing. There was zero. And so it was just, it was a surprise to me. And to be honest, just because you look at the assets that they gave up to get Ricky Williams and, just the success that he had there in New Orleans previously to me getting there, you just didn't think that would be the pick that they would be making as far as a running back was concerned.
The intention, Deuce, was to talk to you about this year's draft, but I'm so much more fascinated in this. Maybe we can circle back on the draft. I do have one other question, and it relates to what you were saying about you wonder about the injury. You can't help but wonder about if your circumstance had been different and you had been with a different team, maybe a team that wasn't playing primarily on AstroTurf, would you have been able to stay healthy? I mean, is that the question that goes through your mind?
I think the biggest thing is my first knee injury, I was on grass. And I wasn't even supposed to be in the game at that time. We were up in Green Bay, and the drive previously, Coach Haslett had tried to take me out. We were getting beat pretty bad, and since my offensive linemen were still in the game, I wanted to stay in the game with them. And so if we were losing, then hey, look, we're all going to lose together. It's not just take the star player out, take Deuce out. My linemen are out there, and I want to stay in with those guys. And we call a screenplay to the right, and I go to plan, and my knee just gave out. It just stuck in that thick grass. And, you go back and you just say, man, what if you just stay out? You don't go in that series, because like I said, they tried to take me out the series before, and I was just like, I'm going to finish it. We're getting beat. We're not coming back, but I want to finish it with my guys. And so it's unfortunate. Now, the second knee injury, yes, I was at home, and it was a kind of a throwaway pass against Tennessee Titans. But, I don't think any one of them truly had anything to do with the turf. It was the surface and the type of cleats that I had on, but not necessarily, primarily the turf, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it certainly does. I hope we can circle back and maybe visit briefly next week and kind of talk about what you anticipate this draft looking like.